Good afternoon, everybody. Today is the 15th of November, 13th of November, 2021, 12 noon on my time. And I hear some people are getting threatened with termination if they don't take the poison. And even there's some testing involved. So my tactic is to point out the nature of this employment relationship and how it works. And some people have never had a real job, they've been contractors or something like that. So what we see on the screen here is a Jack-in-the-Box application. And in a typical application, you have the name, address, and then right here, they want the last 4 digits of the social security number. And that's, people fill this out. When they fill out the application, goes to the employer who's employing this application, the name and social security number, and they create an employee ID, an employee name, and then the time, the labor involved, working 40 hours a week or whatever, goes on a time card, bi-weekly or even weekly. And that time card is a bill of lading, taking your most precious commodity, which is your time, gets logged down onto that time card. It's signed by the quote unquote employee, transferred to the employer who signs for it. And that's a bill of lading, where your time commodity is then converted to the bill of lading. I'm still here waiting to hear back from the IRS about 1099 OIDs are required on bills of lading. So we have this application for employment is no different really than this application for a Visa card. You have name, social security number, telephone number, and even some of these have have employment history. They want to know about the employment history for getting a credit card. So it seems like every application is an application for credit. And under UCC Article 5, letters of credit is what these applications are. All applications are for credit, and certificates are securities. Otherwise, it'd be a notice, declarations are of war. And so this is how the employment contract begins. So with that, just like with a credit application, they take that credit application, run it through a TT&L account, tax terminal loan account, and create a credit line. And it's that credit line that's created where if I use a credit card, when I swipe the card, it comes out of that credit line to pay the vendor. And then every month we get a statement showing a positive amount of credit that was used out of that credit line, which was created by the credit application that I signed. So every time I sign something, I'm authorizing this extension of credit, and the Treasury goes into debt to provide that credit because the government got out of the money and coining business back in '33, went bankrupt, and that's when they put all the gold in the Federal Reserve building, called it the Exchange Stabilization Fund in '34. Then the Exchange Stabilization Fund created the IMF and World Bank as a straw man. And the IMF is an agency of the UN. And so the Social Security numbers, the EIN numbers are sourced from the UN through the IMF, administered by the Social Security Administration, and is enforced by the IMF, by the IRS. So the IRS, SSA, IMF, UN, and Exchange Stabilization Fund are all foreign to the United States. So with this, so when they're going to come and I'll show this header. Okie dokie. So I'm gonna toggle over to the W-4 process, and then we'll go into how the statutes apply, which statutes apply to us. I call it the W-4 process. Here are the parties that are liable for the tax. Liability for the tax is under 2603. So here are the parties that are liable under 26.3, personal liability for the tax. And if we see the highlighted underlines in 1, 2, and 3, you have a transferee, a trustee, and a transferor. So the transferee, when I wanted electricity, I filled out a credit application and took that Article 5 letter of credit and transferred it to the electric company. And that Article 5 letter of credit application is what funds that electric account. In the same way, if someone does work for me, like puts on a new roof, and I transfer $10,000 to them, well, the person who's the transferee becomes liable for the taxes. If I don't report who I gave the 10 grand to, I pay the taxes. But if I do report who the $10,000 go to, the transferee pays the taxes. That's an example of a transferee. Taxable termination, you have a foreclosure, a car repossession, if they shut down a bank account, they shut down a credit card account, anytime they terminate an account, whether it's foreclosure, car repo, credit card, or they terminated my interest in that account, and the trustee, whoever signed the order to terminate the account, or whoever unilaterally elected to terminate the account, becomes a trustee, and the trustee is liable for the taxable liability. Skip person, we talked about the time card, that bill of lading that we do every 2 weeks or every week. When that time card is monetized using that credit line for that job application, the employer then usually doesn't come out and hand me cash in my hand. Some do, but usually they take and try and either do a direct deposit to the bank, or they give you a check and you can go deposit the check in the bank, but they never pay me. It always goes to the bank. And so they skip paying me and it goes to the bank. And the skip person, see the direct script other than a direct script, there's a skip person and the bank is the skip person. So the transferor takes my value of my labor and transfers it to the bank and skipping me. So the employer is actually liable for that excise tax. They try to paint it on us, but we'll deal with that, recasting the W-2 into the proper excise tax later on. So these are the parties that are liable for the taxes, and they're only liable for the taxes when I tell the IRS about it. Just like if I don't tell the IRS I paid this contractor 10 grand, well, then I'm going to pay taxes on the 10 grand, and they'll get the cash, and the credit will just run with them, and they're all the better for it. That's what's happening with these banks and credit cards and everything, the courts and everything else. So 2603 is the starting point. Let's talk about policy. This whole mandate thing, I'll jump off of the mandate real quick. This mandate, mandate is just an offer. It's not a court order or it's anything like that. It's an offer. I have a hard time. That banner doesn't go away on my computer. Here, mandate. There we go. It's from LexisNexis, mandate, Black's Law. And there's 6 definitions in here. An order from an appellate court, orders or offers, judicial command directed to an officer of the court. That's in-house. In politics, electorate overwhelming show approval of a given political candidate. You realize for these elections to work, right? In a democracy, you need 50% or more participation. Once we register to vote, that registration leaves equitable title with the registrar, and we get the legal right to vote. And it's the registration that is the mandate of the people. And so as long as we have more than 50% of the people registered to vote, that corporation in DC will still have a mandate. And if everyone were to go to register with Raytheon or maybe Chipotle or McDonald's, if we all go register to vote, and the people registered with that corporation, well, that corporation would be responsible for carrying out the will of the people. So this registration process is where the mandate to rule comes from, and that's why we won't have a constitutional convention, because even if all 50 states wanted to have a constitutional convention, the people have still registered with a registrar for the voting under the voting laws, and the people have spoken by registering their equitable value with that registration for the voting. So that's why even though there's more than enough states to call a convention, it's not going to happen. Anyway, so Roman civil law, I written command by a principal to an agent. I'm the principal and they're the agent. And then number 4, 5, in Louisiana law, a contract by which one person, the principal, confers authority on another person, the mandatory to transact one or more business affairs. So when they talk about this mandate is just an offer to contract, and they make it sound like you have to do it or anything like that. So this is the trick about the mandate. So I go back over the slideshow. And so even when they write an executive order, or here in Arizona, they have this policy they have about this mask wearing and everything. The policy only, but I work at Dairy Queen, they have a policy. The policy, I have to wear this cute little outfit when I work at Dairy Queen. And but when someone comes into Dairy Queen, this customer or client comes into Dairy Queen, they don't have to put on this cute little outfit. Well, they have the money. But anyone who's an employee does have to put on this cute little uniform, because that's the policy of the under that anyone related to that corporation has these policies, like can't wear Daisy Dukes and things like that to go to work. So the policy only applies to those under that particular umbrella. In this case, the executive branch making policy for those under the executive. Out here in the private, it'd be like Chipotle making a new rule that everyone has to wear a beret in their hair. Well, I'm not under Chipotle, so I don't have to wear a beret in my hair because I'm not under the policy. Can you see the top part? Mine's not shrinking for some reason. Whoever makes the order has to pay, right? Okay. Whoever makes the order is the debtor. Whoever makes the offer is the debtor, and whoever orders something has to pay. It says here, if I go into Dairy Queen and the Dairy Queen employees demand I wear the Dairy Queen uniform, or else the employees are making an offer. And the demand versus to demand performance under a contract in a lawsuit for a payment of a debt or performance of an act, the party suing the plaintiff should allege that it demanded payment for performance. When I go to Walmart and I buy that brand new underwear, because I finally need new underwear because men keep them forever, and that goes on that conveyor belt, Walmart is offering all their stuff for sale. So when I go to the counter and put that special, you get four underwear plus two for a dollar amount that they're offering to sell it for. Dairy Queen is making the offer, and if I get to the counter, they say it's $50 due to inflation. I go, oh, that's way too expensive. At that point, at the counter, even though they've scanned in the barcode, I can walk away. I can walk out of Walmart, and the security guard for Walmart's not going to chase me down and bring me back to that counter to force me to pay that $50 just because they scanned it. Because the debtor is the offerer and the acceptor is the creditor. Most people see it the other way at checkout. Walmart's asking them for money to buy this product, and they think they're the debtor. That if someone's asking me for money, I couldn't be the debtor. I'd have to be the creditor. It's the same reason when I need money to go to Vegas, I set up a yard sale on my patio and start selling my junk because I want money to go to Vegas. So I need more money because I'm a debtor, and everyone who comes to my carport to buy my cool stuff are the creditors giving me money so I can go to Vegas. So whoever makes the offer is the debtor. Whoever accepts the offer is the creditor. An offer can be full offer or conditional offer, but the acceptor controls the contract. They say demand, I hear order. So the Dairy Queen employees place an order of performance, a demand. In these scenarios, place unqualified orders. So if someone orders me to do something, we should agree on a price first, but they don't. They just order me to do something. So my providing the goods and services for whatever, wearing a mask or getting a jab or whatever they're attempting to order from me under their policy. The goods and services ordered by Dairy Queen Inc. agents, the employees, which in this instance is wearing a Dairy Queen uniform under Dairy Queen policy that only applies to Dairy Queen employees. If they're trying to stuff their policy onto me, then I became a de facto employee with one major benefit for me. Unqualified order. The Dairy Queen employees bargained for a minimum wage in exchange for their obeying Dairy Queen policy. I did not. If I order a hamburger at Ritz-Carlton without looking at the menu and they charge some big bucks, I gotta pay. I should have read the menu and bargained a price at Ritz-Carlton. And this is what the Ritz-Carlton in Miami looks like. Here's the menu. A classic burger, 20 bucks, signature, $22, a garden burger, 18. This is actually the menu from the Ritz-Carlton, $19 for a chicken and deep sea. Those are pricey. You can go to Wendy's and get a cheaper one, but I would have to look at the menu to know what I'm ordering before I order it. Otherwise, I'm obliged to pay these prices because I took the benefit. And by taking the benefit, I have an obligation to incur the liability. So this is the Ritz's burger menu. For instance, how much are your shoes worth? If you're out in the desert and someone demands your shoes, it's hot out there, how much are your shoes worth? Who determines the value of the shoes? The value of my shoes is huge. I can set a price that no one can say that's too much. So if someone orders something and we don't bargain on a price, and I named the price for fulfilling that order. They can't come back later and bitch about it any more than I can say, oh man, a burger for $20, that's too expensive. I could have gone to Wendy's for $2 instead, but too late. If someone demands performance, so when Dairy Queen demands that I provide goods and services from me, but Dairy Queen does not bargain the price of my performance, and the performance is a Dairy Queen policy, and I, the de facto employee, may assess the value, $500 for $1,500 or $5,000 for the unqualified order. And when I leave Dairy Queen, I leave without getting paid for the value of the goods and services. So they order something from me, I provide the goods and services, and then they don't pay me. And when Dairy Queen doesn't pay me, they withheld my pay for the goods and services provided. And then and to prove it, I have my Dairy Queen receipt as proof that I was on site at Dairy Queen at the time when the Dairy Queen was demanding performance from customers treated as de facto employees. Problem is, how do I get paid? How do I get paid my withheld fees? I use a withholding certificate because I performed services. The value of the services were received by Dairy Queen, but they didn't pay me. They withheld my pay. This happens to be a withholding certificate. We'll go over this certificate. This is the old one, 2019. Ever wonder why line 6 in the W-4 is there? Additional amount, if any, you want withheld from each paycheck. And line 6 is where I assess the value of the performance I did as a de facto, because they withheld that $5,000 from my paycheck from the services. And in line 7, you write exempt. It means I'm exempt from backup withholding. That's what line 6 is for. It says on line 6, I put $5,000. The question is, am I making a claim for that? Because whoever makes the claim has to prove it. Line 6 says additional amount, if any, you want withheld from each paycheck. The amount I put in line 6, I'm saying, don't pay me $5,000. E.g., I authorize the employer to withhold $5,000. Putting the value in this line 6 is not a claim; it's an anti-claim. If I were to tell somebody, "Hey, Derek, you owe me $10,000," well, that's a claim, and now we have a controversy. We're going to have to go to court. But if I go to Derek and I say, "You know what, Derek, don't pay me $10,000," I'm telling someone not to pay you $10,000. That doesn't hurt Derek at all. So this line 6 is an anti-claim. Don't pay me the $5,000, and now it's a withholding credit. This is where we go with it. So I'm not making a claim is the big thing. But whoever makes the claim has to prove it. Real world example: I bring home $5,000 a month. This is like when I have a job, a real job. I bring home $5,000 a month. If I write $5,000 on line 6 of the W-4, then my pay statement will show 0 every month. However, the W-2 will show $60,000 in withholding. And when I do the 1040, the total withholding for the year will be in excess of whatever tax liability that may or may not be there. And I get my $60,000 back as a tax return. So in a similar way, I do all these $5,000 for Walmart demanding, or Dairy Queen demanding I wear a mask. When I do the W-4 for all the mask wearing with all the receipts to prove I was there, well, that becomes a withholding credit for me. The tricky part is, under Subtitle C versus Subtitle A, the W-4 withholding is what is used to fund and credit my FICA, and that is my Social Security benefits. In normal employment, the employer has to pay 6.5%, comes out from the employer, and 6.5% comes out of my gross pay. That 13% contribution to SSA is mandatory under Subtitle C of Title 28.6. So Subtitle C has an enforcement statute in Subtitle C. It's mandatory because there's a third party involved in the Subtitle C. Subtitle A. Subtitle A, though, Subtitle C is employment. Subtitle A is individual, partnership, or or fiduciary. Subtitle A has no enforcement statutes because there's no third party involved in Subtitle A. If the lender in Subtitle A wants to narc on whoever got the credit from the lender, well, that's the lender's election. they're not going to force the lender. No, lender, you're going to have to file so you can get your credit back. So there's no enforcement in Subtitle A. It's the lender's election whether or not the lender pays the taxes or the recipient pays the taxes, the transferee, for instance, or the trustee. And on that W-4, an 8, 9, and 10 at the bottom. So at the top, you have name, social security number, and address. And if you remember on that Dairy Queen application, you have name, social security number, and address. Same thing on that credit card, name, number, and address. So the top part, name, number, and address, you have this disclosing information in the middle, which is boring. Line 6 is a dollar amount. Line 7, I'm saying I'm exempt from backup withholding. Down in 8, 9, 10 is the party who receives my time cards and who receives the credit application. Because the employer in 8, 9, and 10, the employer is employing the name and social security number. Employing as mean they're using the name and social security number from that credit application. And that's where the employment comes in.
The W-4 that you just held up, it kind of resembles a check, does it not?
Yeah, we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that on another screen. About their policy. Oh, there we go. Okay. 8, 9, 10. So Dairy Queen essentially is my de facto becomes my de facto employer when Dairy Queen orders goods and services, mask wearing, under Dairy Queen, or if Dairy Queen demands that the employees take a jab, which they can't take off the jab when they leave work, so they're actually employing these employees for life. If they actually do jab somebody, they're employed for life, because you can never take off what that employment contract never ends. I wouldn't get the jab for that reason. So Dairy Queen becomes a de facto employer. And number 2, it makes sense to put Dairy Queen on line 8 of the W-4. Put the first date Dairy Queen, put the first Dairy Queen date of the year on line 9 when they demanded the services, and get Dairy Queen's EIN by calling online or writing, or you can go look up the 10K, Dairy Queen's 10K, and the 10K will have Dairy Queen's EIN number on the Form 10K of the Securities and Exchange Commission. 1 through 5 is where we put the straw man's information. We went over this. Line 3, put however you file. Line 4, and line 5, you put zero dependents for the maximum withholding, and then signing at the bottom where the signature is. I put above the squiggle my signature. I put the qualifier under 3-402, authorized signature of a represented person done in good faith, because that removes my liability under 3-402. That's how liability is limited. And that quoted section in 3-402 is one of the only places I've ever seen anything quoted in the UCC. They put it in quotes saying, hey, pay attention to this line in 3-402. And I do that generally with every single signature I sign. It says, Allentown Corporation's mask policy on their website. When I walk into the store, they have their friendly offer, publicly offered, put on a mask. And since they're making the offer to provide goods and services, I can wear a mask over my mouth and breathe through my nose and still charge them $5,000. In this mask Nazi area, here's what goes to the IRS. Some evidence of a mask policy. Either get it off their or take a picture of the sign as you go in. All original receipts for the year at the store. Receipts from the year. Every time I went to Walmart, I have all the receipts. I put a little check mark on it. I put a little check mark on the upper right hand corner. Then I add up all the receipts. I scan them, add up all the receipts, and $5,000 per receipt for providing the goods and services. Every time I go in there, they still have this offer to provide goods and services, and so I add the total amount of all the times I went there times 5,000 or 15,000 if they want me to cover my nose, and then all the receipts, and I put that amount on the on line 6 of the W-4. And the 1040V states the largest value is 100 million. No checks of 100 million or more may be accepted. So that's the maximum amount we can do for the W-4 withholding is 100 million. See on box 3 of the 1040V, it tells you how to write on the receipts. Amount you are paying by check or money order, make your check or money order payable to, not pay to the order of, payable to the United States Treasury. Pay to the order of makes it negotiable. Pay to is not negotiable. And that's where we get this on the receipt, like pay to United States Treasury, and this, that the signature line, we'll get into that later on here. So we write pay to the United States, pay to United States Treasury on each receipt. Do a check mark in the upper right hand corner on the face, and on the back I write pay to United States Treasury. Signature, social security number, red number on the back. The same goes on the contract, e.g. the policy where the photo printout, and a little more. Because I want to take whatever their offer is. I'm going to send that to the Treasury. Here's their offer. They're the debtor. Because whoever makes the offer is the debtor. So that evidence of debt, which is the order to pay, order to wear a mask, that's a debt, and we send that to the Treasury along with the W-4 and the receipts. The contract that begets all this is the mask wearing goods and services ordered under corporate policy. So I would accept the offer. Remember, whoever makes the offer is the debtor, whoever accepts the offer is the creditor, and controls the contract. Accept their offer by writing something like accepted by name SSN on behalf of the United States Treasury, signed, done in good faith. Why? Because Title 18, Section 8 states other representatives of value of whatever denomination are obligations of the United States. So the value of that offer, which is not set in stone in dollar amounts, is an obligation of the United States. The mask policy has value, at least to the company and apparently to the nation due to the coup, and apparently to some Karens and Darrens out there. That's some interesting videos to watch. Sending the W-4 sandwich. The W-4 sandwich is with the W-4 all filled out and line 6 total, receipts with the check mark in the upper right hand corner, and third-party endorsement on the back. The contract negotiated in the United States Treasury. Form 1043 with box 3 total, the same as the W-4 line 6. And some folks signed the back of the 1040V. I really don't have a reference either way. I haven't seen a difference yet. The W-4 sandwich I had been sending to Ogden, Utah. But then I found the Internal Revenue IRM section where it talks about, here's where the IRM is talking about remittances and bills of exchange. And here's the address for the remittances and bills of exchange. Because when I write pay to and sign it, it becomes a bill of exchange, goes to room 3413 at 1500 Pennsylvania Avenue, Northwest Washington, D.C. That's where my next set is going to go. To employ methods they have employed to collect data. And so employment's not necessarily digging a hole. Companies employing using the name and social security number. Anytime anyone uses the all caps name and SSN, they are employing the IMF SSN person. As the agent for the SSN, I have three duties. To place orders, keep records, and report to my principal through the IRS on a yearly, quarterly basis. Those are the three duties I have for that social security number. If I don't report any of the value transferred or taxably terminated or skip person transferred by the transfer war, if I don't tell the IRS about it, I'm the agent de some sort. And I become liable because I didn't do my agency duties. But if I do tell the IRS, hey, IRS, I gave the electric company $10,000 last year, and I send them either the statement and the contract, and the IRS goes, oh, you guys were employing our social security number. Well, we're going to have to audit your books. Now, all of a sudden, the electric company is scrambling to try to make sure their books are clean and they got the most accurate meter reading or the lowest meter reading, so they pay as little tax as possible. But if I don't tell the IRS that I transferred my credit to the electric company, well, then the electric company runs away with the credit, or the bank runs away with the credit. And they make these big, huge buildings and live like kings while we sit here and scrape and bend and bow. By not reclaiming our credit, we damage ourselves and damage the Treasury by putting them in further debt. To whom is the duty owed? I only have a duty to report to the employment of the SSN person to the IRS. My duty is to report to the IRS. Some people were sending these W-4s to the employer, and all this kind of kerfuffle, they start kicking up a bunch of dust and even shutting down their accounts stupidly because there's a termination there. So I send the W-4 to the IRS because that's who I have a duty to report to. Do not send the W-4 to the line 8 person. It freaks them out. They get pissed off at you and they start a bunch of shiite. Send our report to the IRS and let line 8 yell at the IRS. And I would really like to be there when they start arguing with the IRS, because it never goes well to argue with the IRS. It's a stupid thing to do. And that's it for mask services. Wearing a mask as a de facto employee doing services under corporate policy, which is piece work, is one type. There are other situations where the SSN person is employed, and that is used by some company. Application for electricity, internet, utilities, bank accounts, credit cards, mortgages, any SSN application linked account gets a W-4. Every application, every declaration is a declaration of war, every notice is a warning, every memorial is a record of a dead thing, memorandum is a recording of a living thing, and every certificate is a security. Every application is an application for credit. Article 5, letters of credit. Every application uses the name SSN and a signature date and pay to Article 5 letters of credit. Letter of credit means a definite undertaking that satisfies the requirements of 104 by an issuer to a beneficiary at the request for some account or an applicant, in the case of a financial institution, to itself or for its own account, to honor a documentary presentation by payment or delivery of an item of value. Sounds like Title 18, Section 8. And don't forget the memo line. The memo line, there was a guy who was doing a modification back in the 2008 heyday of scooping up property, and they did a modification for 6 months. He was sending in his checks, paying the modification amount, and after 6 months, they came and foreclosed on his house. And he called him and said, "Hey, I made all the 6 months payment. What are you doing foreclosing?" I said, "Well, when you send in the checks, there was nothing in the memo line, so we didn't know how to apply it, and so we put it in an escrow account. So you never successfully did the modification, so we're still going to foreclose." How's that for dirty pool? That's what the memo line's for. If I don't give someone instructions on what to do with that check by putting down on the memo line for apply to principal or settlement and closure, if I don't memorialize what I intend for that amount of that instrument to apply to, they can use it for whatever they want. And they did back in 2008. The reason I'm applying for an electric account is because I'm interested in electricity. The interest is why I filled out an application for the internet, the bank, the credit card, driver's license, or employment. If I am not interested in or do not have an interest in whatever the corporation is offering, I wouldn't submit or tender an application. And here's how it normally goes. I submit an application in the name in SSN, and that name is the name on the account. At the end of each month, the company sends out a bill, as some call it, also called a statement, and at work it's called advice. The bill shows how much goods and services I use, and there is a dollar amount, but that dollar amount is always positive. Notice the monthly statement has a positive dollar amount showing the statement of account. And a statement of account is a UCC Article 9 instrument. Where I am with the agency duties for the IMF, for that account number, the duties to order, make records, and report to the IMF enforcement agency, IRS revenue agents on a yearly basis. And for the reasons I require these tax identification numbers from these employers down on line 8. Each transferee in receipt of the estate for Title 26, 6324, the estate already has a lien on it. That's what 6324 says. Who as the executor, the employer as the executor under 2002 and fiduciary under 2203 has a tax liability as qualified heirs having tax liability reporting that I am duty bound to report to my principal. Now duty bound to account for the alternate valuation of the estate. I'm going to get into that, what an alternate valuation of the estate is. Because that alternate valuation of the estate has to go before a probate referee ratification or determination by insolvency officers of the IRS for reporting to my principal through their points of contact, the IRS. Each fiduciary having actual constructive possession of estate property must be bonded for Title 26, 2032A E11 by the Secretary of State in Puerto Rico. So that's the W-4 process. Is essentially, like Gareth was saying, is like a check. let me find my here. So we go over to here. There's the application. There's that application. W4. So if you look at a check here, right? This is a Chase Bank check. Up in the upper left-hand corner, we start with a name, and address of the person. On the W4, and 1, 2, and 2, we have a name and address up in the top part. The social security number we'll get to. Then we go down to, we have a pay to the order of some employer name or account number down there. And in line 6, we have a dollar amount, just like we do on line 6. The pay to person is down here in number 8. Number 8 is the one who's receiving the time card and or the credit application. And the line 8 person is the employer. And then we go down to 8, 9, and 10, the EIN number. So when I go to the bank and I do an application to open a bank account, that social security number in number 2 gets wrapped down here in the account number. So the account number is essentially a mask for the social security number. And the memo line would be the account number, because down here in the W4, down the W4, you would put the Dairy Queen and whatever the like the receipts you get from the you get a receipt from Dairy Queen, it'd be like a receipt number. Or some of these accounts have a when you do your little card, you get discounts by typing in the phone number. When you check out, you put the phone number down there next to that employer for the to identify uniquely this employment relationship. So it's odd that the W4 looks like a check, because when I fill out a check and I put a dollar amount in there, I'm not really making a claim, I'm doing a disbursement. The W4 is the same way. By putting a dollar amount, how much I don't want to get paid is actually authorizing a disbursement from the Social Security account. The only thing that the W4 has to go along with is some contract, because a contract's an evidence of value. Contracts, receipts, or statements, the statements we get in the mail from monthly statements we have, and all that would go with the W4, because under the W4 instructions, I'll just pull it up again, 1040 instructions. 1040 instructions tell us to provide a statement. Instructions, let's go down here, come up in a minute. Let's go to number 108. 108, enter. Paper Production Act notice. Down here, 108. Our legal right to ask for information is Internal Revenue Code 6001, 6011, 6012A, and their regulations. They say you must file a return or statement. So when I take all the statements I get for all these, transactions I go through, the statements go along with the W4, because that's what it demands, a statement. So all the statements, even that receipt itself is not only a statement of how much credit was transferred to their till, but it's also a security I get redeemed for that credit. And so this is where the W4 process then notifies the Internal Revenue Service that, hey, Walmart or Dairy Queen or the electric company or the banks, that they received credit that was sourced or linked to a social security number, and as transferees they have a liable to pay. For the bank, I add up all the deposits and all the statements. For the electric company, all the charges, all the payments. And then for credit cards, same thing, charges and payments. You add both sides together, and that total amount of either deposits plus withdrawals would actually go on line 6 for the bank. There's a woman who drives truck who I work with for a couple of years now, and she was up in Northern California at TGI Fridays, and this old guy came in there chatting up the cute little girl at the front of TGI Fridays, and since they're on the truck road, they asked the girl at the TGI Fridays, said, "Where are you going?" She says, "I just cashed out everything in California. It's getting too crazy." And I said, "Oh, what'd you do?" "Well, I'm a second generation banker. I'm going to move to Texas." Well, that perked up the truck driver's ears when she asked. She and her partner asked if the second generation 80-year-old banker would like to join them and sit down. And he said, "Oh, sure. Old guys like to talk to people." And in the course of the conversation, the lady truck driver sprung a question on him. She asked the banker, you know, what would happen if the members of your bank were to add all the deposits and all the draws and put that as additional withholding on the W-4? She said he kind of, his eyes lit up and he kind of set up in his booth, and he said they would never think to do that, which is an admission. They would never think to do that. The last line's key, do that. And so the W-4 process. And so you add up both sides of the ledger because both are social security number source, exempt in line 7, evidences of debt code, evidence of debts attached with a 1040V, and send it off to room 3413. And the other thing I would suggest doing, fill out a W-4, and that withholding section, the amount in line 6 or line 4C, we'll see the current W-4. That amount I would put down as withholding down at the bottom of the 1040. You can send in multiple 1040s during the year. Now we just put the withholding section down at the bottom. So now that withholding section is documented on a 1040 for weekly. Here's the new W-4, which I don't like. It's too busy. Same stuff at the top. And it's this middle stuff, multiple jobs, your number of dependents. Right here in 4C, instead of additional amount withholding, they have extra withholding. And this is again where the dollar amount goes. Only debtors have deductions. Creditors don't have deductions. And so the withholding amount goes here. And in the instructions for this new W-4, you have to write under here. You have to write under here. You have to write exempt. You have to write it in. They don't give you a box 7 like they used to do down here where you write exempt, you know, exempt, EMPD. Yeah, they don't have that box anymore for whatever reason.
So just for a point of clarification, Smoking Baby, when you say contract, I know a lot of people may have not comprehended what you were articulating. Is a policy of another corporation that I am being coerced into following, is that a contract? And if it is a contract, is the best way to prove it by asking or inquiring about a physical copy of Dairy Queen's policy that they're enforcing upon me?
Well, usually, you know, the idiots they have working at the counter don't really have the policy. I just go download it, or I write them a letter for it.
So for clarity's purposes, the policy they're enforcing on you is in fact the evidence of the contract, correct?
Well, that's the source of the offer. That's I mean, it's binding to the employees, but it's not binding on the customer. But if the employees want to bind me to their employee policy, they're actually ordering goods and services and thereby creating the contract when I perform.
Thank you for providing that clarity for everybody out there. Please continue on and let me know when you're ready for questions.
Okay, here's the interesting about the Treasury. This is interesting. I had to go back in the archive to get it. Where's the elusive Treasury? Can you say Puerto Rico? Down here it's 27 CFR 2050-11. Remember under Title 26, 2032A E11, anyone administering our estates have to be bonded. So your employer using that social security number, the bank using the social security number, the courts using the social security number, they all have to be bonded because they're trying to loot the estate. And they have to be bonded because the estate already has a lien on it under 6324. And the bond comes from the secretary in Puerto Rico, because that's where the IRS is located. Back to the birth certificate. This is what I use instead of the W-4. As a, you know, W-4 has an employer relationship. This has a payor and a payee. Is it payee? There's no pay, but there's a payor. We have a payer up here instead of an employer up here. And I know people are getting fired if they don't do this. We'll get to the firing thing. You notice on the other W-4. Let me put them together. There's the W-4. There's the W-4 here. So if you nope. W-4. See how the W-4 here is all chopped up in little boxes, and they have that perjury statement down there in the signature. Under penalties of perjury, I declare to have examined, blah blah blah. We don't have any of that on the W-4B. It's all nice and smooth. No perjury statement at the bottom. And this is called a voluntary withholding request versus a employee's withholding allowance certificate. Voluntary withholding request. I put in all the information like normal. Down here, the identification number would be the employee ID, whatever identifying number you would use for the employer. And I check off box 7. I want you to stop withholding federal income tax from payments. He says payments, you know, it's not my income, and we have payments. We have payee payments, and a signature without a proofread statement. So this is what I like using. But I got fired.
Would this stop any federal income withholding tax, say, that you initiated when you first started working for a corporation?
What do you mean? There's no subtitle A being taken out. It would still take out FICA. You would still get your unemployment, your workman's comp, and your Social Security Medicare. That 13%, 6.5 would still come out of it, which is fine with me. We don't even see the 6.5%, and if they don't withhold the 6.5%, because it's contemplated at what the hourly rate or the salary they're contemplating, that 6.5% is already contemplated. So even if I went independent contractor, I don't think, renegotiating the contract, you get your 6.5% back. But as long as the employer has to cough up half, I'm perfectly happy to do the W-4B. But there's no subtitle A withholding done with this W-4B versus the W-4, and this employer versus payer thing. Employer. This is from the 1939 Public Salaries Tax Act. 1939 Public Salary Tax Act, 1939, where they redefined employee. That's right up here. Words comp. Let me see. Gross income related to the gross income is amended, inserting the words compensation for personal service. The following, including personal service as an officer, including, which is a limiting word, an officer or employee of a state, a political division thereof, or any agency or instrumentality of one of the more foregoing. You have to hold public office in order for this employee status to attach. It says down here also, compensation. The United States hereby consents to the taxation of compensation received after the 31st on the 1938 for personal services as an officer, employee, United States Treasury, possession, District of Columbia, or an agency thereof. So this is where they redefined employee all of a sudden. And then that W-4 goes in there, and people say, "Oh, this is a withholding as an employee." So they're consenting to have the withholding for the federal subtitle A tax withholding. So this is where the trick happened in 39. But the regulations give us the Title 26 regulations still give us a way out, claiming to be a person not subject to withholding. The W-4B takes care of that. The tricky part in here is that when we talk about a payee up here, reliance to the customer foreign trust, grantor trust, a form, I have to turn in a W-9 form for the beneficiary owner claiming to be a payee. See down here, if I'm claiming to be a payee, I need to supply a W-9 along with my W-4B. Beneficial owner or payee's claim of U.S. status in general under paragraph B1 of the section, a withholding agent is not required to withhold under subchapter 3 of the code on payments to a U.S. payee. So these are the regulations that come into play. There's a whole bunch in here. They're really cool. I like these sites. What else? Oh, that's me. We're going to get to, remember we get statements in the mail, right? We get statements in the mail. We have a statement, and then we have to do a notice, and then we have to do a proof of claim, right? So we have the statement, we have the W-4, and we have the 1040, and we have the 1040-V. So we have a statement of Internal Revenue Service, we have a notice of federal taxes due, and we have a proof of claim that the taxes are due. And then we have a 4810 prompt assessment. Everything kind of happens in fees. And you see over here, we have gift, estate, employment, and excise taxes on the 4810. So this is an enforcement form here. that we have these statement we get from the electric company, or the offer to get jabbed, or the offer to wear the mask. That's a statement. Then we do the notice, the W-4, and then we do the 1040B for the voucher. You notice down here they have the kind of tax in part 2. I've highlighted. Number 2 says the kind of tax. Same thing on the notice, kind of tax, and the same thing on the 2373. It always happens in threes for whatever reason. And then we have down here at the bottom, interesting tax practice here. IRS is a claimant of the estate. Death waits for no one, not including the IRS. The very first line. Death waits for no one, including the IRS. And this is where I learned about these 3 forms down here in the IRS notices section. Over here on the left-hand side, IRS notices. IRS typically uses 3 forms to notify the executor. Who's the executor? 2002, who is liable for the tax. And who's the executor? Under 2203 is anyone with actual or constructive possession of decedent estate property. Anything tied to that Social Security number. Anyone administering a name and numbered account are the fiduciaries who, as executors, have a liability for the tax. And here's the forms: 10492, 4490, and 2373. This is where this came from. I'll make this available to Derek. This guy's good. You can find him out there. There's a whole bunch of great articles in there. Death waits for no one, including the IRS. That'd be a great t-shirt. And here's 63. If delinquent taxes on right just below the death, on the paragraph below it, if the delinquent taxes are estate taxes, the IRS can be expected to pursue 6324, a state tax lien, for more readily than the 6321 general lien. That's why these fiduciaries have to be bonded by the Secretary of the Treasury in case they run off with a tax credit. That bond is there, they can liquidate the bond. That's required under 2032 AE11 because there's an existing lien on the estate. And that's what the bond is there to remedy. Here's mandate. Add, okay. So let me go back here to the beginning. That one, go here. Here's my Sears card. And I know that people are getting fired, but how do we assess the value that goes on W-4? That's where we're at right now. We've been through the W-4 process. Whoever makes the offers is the debtor. Whoever accepts the offer is the creditor. We can accept the offer conditionally. There is a so let's say they go ahead and terminate me from the job because I don't want the poison, and they don't accept my religious exemption because they don't believe my firmly held religious beliefs, which is their religion, because a belief is a religion. I don't believe you. Well, that's your religion. You're a heretic. We burn you at the stake, employer. So if they go ahead and terminate me, at the time of termination, let's say I'm making $100,000 a year. So that $100,000 a year, the value of that paycheck for that bill of lading time commodity comes out of the credit application that funded the entire operation at the beginning. That's where your paycheck, your credit application is paying you your own paycheck. And it's also paying the overhead rate to give you toilets, toilet paper, the coffee, the cafeteria, the maid service, the electricity, the air conditioning is all funded by the credit lines from the employment applications. So for me, so that's where the credit comes from. And at 75 years of age, we have to start collecting Social Security. And it's just so happens at 75 years of age, a domestic vessel must be retired. Under Title 46, 75 years is the life of a domestic vessel. So if I'm 55 years old and I get hired at $100,000 a year to charter in order for them to use that name and Social Security number, that name and Social Security number is a vessel. You notice every vessel has a name and number. You know, was it on Saturday Night Live, the Raging Queen, and then there's a whole number on the boat. So that name and Social Security number is a vessel, and the employer is going to charter that vessel. And the type of charter that it is a bareboat charter. Bareboat charter. Bareboat charter Bahamas. Bareboat charter. Go to Wikipedia. Bareboat charter. I'm going to go to Wikipedia. They do a better job of summarizing it. Put demise charter. Same thing. Demise charter. Wikipedia. A bareboat charter or a demise charter is an arrangement for chartering or hiring of a ship or boat, as a name and social security number, whereby no crew or provisions are included as part of the agreement. Instead, the people who rent the vessel, the employer, from the owner, that's me, are responsible for taking care of such things. The act is commonly known as a bareboat charter. They talk about some legal differences down there. Like the time voyage would be a independent contractor. So when the corporation has a job opportunity and they charter the vessel, they take the application, and then they need a crewman to come on board. And the crewman earns wages. Under the Sherman Act, the wage earner is the least powerful and most protected on the ship. So they charter the vessel, give me a little cube to sit in, a little computer and a little air conditioning and some coffee and Barrett toilets smelling each other's curry farts, and that's the voyage we're on. And then somewhere along the way, the managers get intimidated or want me to dress up for them a certain way, or want to get me drunk to see what secrets they can get out of me, and all kinds of really queer stuff like that. And then they throw me off the boat. They throw me off the boat. But the trick is, when they chartered the vessel for those 55 to 75 years, they front load they take the entire credit line up front. So all those 20 years, that credit line is cashed out at the very beginning to pay for the entirety of the charter. They might throw you off the boat. The entire value of that work contract out to 75, that charter out to 75, they're still sitting on that credit. And they never, even though they fire me, they never return my credit line, which means they're withholding my credit line. And so how I'm going to handle that credit line, it's $100,000 out to 20 years. And that's the amount that I assess. And I use the termination, and they fire me. That's a taxable termination. They terminate me from my voyage that I'm funding. So that termination paperwork, I say pay to the United States Treasury. And then I do the assessment of $100,000 for the next 20 years. That's $2 million. That goes on line 6 of the W-4, or line 4C of the new W-4. And now I have assessed the credit line that funded their operation that they just wanted to throw me off the boat and run away with. The last employer hadn't laid off anybody in 34 years. And then a year and a half after being there, all of a sudden they lay off an entire department. They take out $1 billion loan to upgrade their facilities. All of a sudden they have $1 billion, and they just laid off an entire department. But they haven't laid off anybody in 34 years. All those credit lines of all the past employees have been sitting there unclaimed. And that's what they use as the collateral for getting that $1 billion loan on a project, which amazingly failed. But I'm sure the CEOs had their hands in the pockets on the companies doing the work, and it just flooded them. So that how much I was getting paid from the date I was hired until the date until 75 is the amount of withheld credit that I assess upon termination. And that's what the people who are facing being terminated, that's how much they would assess whether or not you accept the job or not. You can conditionally accept the job, and but you still have that assessment out there to do to report to the IRS. I guess Derek can go into what happened over in Ohio on that on the kids wearing the mask. But here's an interesting case. This plays into the notices that Derek is talking about, and this is the basis of my actually creating my own account. This case, Davila versus Shalala. Davila versus Shalala. The case represents a dilemma created when an administrative agency, taxes are all administrative, lose its own records and fails to reconstruct them or conduct a new inquiry on the merits, resulting in penury. That means loss of money or at least serious hardship for the impoverished citizen. Sounds like me. I'm an impoverished citizen. To summarize that first paragraph, it states, he who fails to produce or recreate the record must expect the court to rule contrary to their position. And this even goes into the Social Security Act and everything else down here. So when I have, this is a Sears card that I opened when I was a kid back in 1984. And then 2004, they shut it down. And the maximum credit line on there was $1,200. I've written to Sears. I've asked them for an accounting because all this credit that went through this account is a transferee taxably liable credit. And then they terminated my account. So again, we have a taxable termination when you have transferee taxes. So they are under two different parts of that 2603. The way I assess the credits, this is not employment. This is for when they shut down an account. I calculate the months between the opening date and closing date. In this case, it's 238 months. The initial credit line, so they don't report the initial credit line. They just show the high limit credit line at the very end. Because I don't know, maybe in 1984 it was $50 or $25 or $100. Who knows what it was back then? I don't remember. But the only thing they're admitting to is the high limit is $1,220. I said, okay, I'll take what you offer there is $1,220. And so the final credit limit is $1,220. My assessment, I'm reading up here, my assessment of the Social Security number source credit that flowed through the Sears card is, I just say I maxed out the card every single month from when it opened and until it was terminated. So that's 238 by 1220. That's 293.60. And then I paid the full amount every single month, even though I made like $360 a month back then. But since I don't have the accounting, I do the payments are equal value. But you see the balance right here, the balance amount, $49. I give them the $49. So I add up the charges of the payments, I subtract the balance, and so the total amount that goes on line 4C of the W-4 is $580,671. And when I write to Sears, or in this case, Citibank took over Sears, I let them know this is my accounting on the account, whatever the account number is, of how much credit went through that account. This is my good faith best assessment based on the information you're reporting on the credit report. If you have a different accounting, please send me that accounting. However, if you fail to respond, we agree that this is the accounting. And this is a with prejudice, nil decet statement. And when they don't respond, they want their $49. They really don't care about the how much credit went through it. They just want their $49. But they're admitting to having $580,000 of my credit, which goes on the W-4. And the evidence of debt is the letter they don't respond to when I send it off to the IRS. So they're greedy. They want their $49 and they get hit with $580,000 tax liability. Which I think is hilarious. The letter I sent off.
And then that $580,000 tax liability actually comes back to you as a creditor as taxable credits, which are just like monopoly casino money, correct? I mean, you can buy houses with tax credits. You can buy cars with tax credits. You can buy businesses with tax credits, correct?
Yes, the tax credits are money. Mm-hmm. I even called the franchise tax board, and I asked Gordon, who was on the phone with us, says, "Yeah, do you guys accept tax credits?" "Oh yes, we take tax credits with the franchise tax board in California." So this is how I go back and recreate the record, because it says in Davila versus Shalala, he who fails to produce or recreate the record must expect the court to rule contrary to the position. So I take what they admit on the credit report, because they call this a credit report, right? That's because they're telling me how much of my credit these companies are holding on to. They're withholding from me. These companies are admitting to having Social Security credit because they didn't create the credit. My signature did. So they're admitting to how much of my credit they're holding on to. And they just don't know that I'm the actual source of the credit. And the IRS doesn't know that the Social Security person is the source of the credit until I fill out the W-4 withholding statement that goes in there. So I have this statement here with the W-4 suffices the instructions in the 1040 paper reduction act on line 108 that I have to send in a statement. So this is how I go back and recreate the record to assess the value of the estate currently being held by Sears, or in this case, Citicorp. Citicorp is holding on to that credit line, and as a fiduciary, having actual or constructive possession of that property, has a tax liability under 2002 and of this alternate valuation of the estate. This may not be the real value, but it's an alternate value. And this is how I assess the taxes. So anyone getting the jab, if you were to take their mandate, their offer, you could conditionally accept their offer. And I would write a conditionally accepted on the top. I would say conditionally accepted. I conditionally accept your offer to take the jab. And however, I require proof that the jab will not cause me any harm, either psychologically or physically or religiously. And in order to indemnify me for your offer that may or may not cause harm, which you haven't proven yet, I demand a $100 million or $50 million bond upfront, irrevocably put into escrow. And the performance on this accepted condition, on this accepted offer, does not commence until you prove conclusively that the jab will cause me no harm to my psychological, spiritual, or physical body in any way, shape, or form. And now the onus is on them to prove up. So I've agreed to take the jab, but they have to prove there is no harm, put up a bond, and no performance happens until they prove there is no harm. And of course, they won't have all the full data in until 2027. So that's how I would handle that offer mandate, that offer to be jabbed.
Let's say that they agree to that offer. The next step would be putting notice of liability onto the physician or physician assistant that would be willing to administer the application.
Okay. One is the offer from the corporation to be jabbed, and that would be $150 million or $25 million bond, indemnity bond, irrevocably put into escrow. And then you would have a separate one for these health professionals who are happily out there murdering people with a jab. And you would have a separate one in like manner that the health practititioner, both nurse and doctor, and even the facility, you would do the same type conditional acceptance, that they would be bound by a $100 million, $50 million bond that must be placed up front, and you must swear that it's completely safe and no harm, and you take personal, civil, criminal, professional liability for that performance, and you must bond me ahead of time and show proof that it will provide no harm in the same way. And then, of course, at the bottom of that practitioner, I said, and I retain first right of refusal. I would still give myself a way out, claiming first right of refusal.
Absolutely. And in doing so, you can still attach your religious exemption and belief in there by doing the conditional acceptance.
Well, the tricky part is if my firmly held religious beliefs say don't fuck with my temple, I can't take any other stance. Otherwise, I'm being double-minded about my religious faith. That just because the company makes the offer, I can conditionally accept it that way and still say, and I want them to prove that this jab does not violate my firmly held religious beliefs. You could add that condition if you have a religious exemption. That's how you can get around that. And you have to prove not only that it's safe psychologically, spiritually, you have to prove it doesn't violate my firmly held religious beliefs. But I've already accepted the offer. You already got to pay for it. And I can add terms and conditions. And now they're just screwed.
Right, because at that point, if they refuse, they're now in commercial dishonor, correct? They made the offer, you accepted the offer, now they're bound to a contract.
And if they don't pay, they withheld. But I would hit them with the withholding for the $50 million.
And now by hitting them with the withholding completely subverts the necessity of going into a court and quibbling over semantics, correct?
Yeah, it's all administrative. They've admitted to the withholding of the value. Now we just give it administratively to the IRS. Here they admitted to withhold it, and then so they withheld it. So now you can go collect it, IRS. You guys get a big scoop out of that. And the IRS is foreign to the United States. They don't care. The president, Nancy Pelosi, the dog catcher, me. The IRS doesn't care who you are. They're going to go after whoever they go after. Al Capone. I mean, they weren't even afraid of the mob.
So essentially, you're putting the big demon on the little demon, and you're allowing them to duke it out for you, and you just sit back and pop a bowl of popcorn and watch the shit show. Then
I'm just a lowly agent. My duty is to order, keep records, and report, and they can go argue with the IRS. I would love to sit there and watch them argue with the IRS.
It's absolutely brilliant, Smoking Baby. It's a wonderful presentation you put on for everybody here today. Go ahead.
Here's this one right here for the check system, so I can give this out. And you can go there and see what the check system is gossiping about you behind your back for the check systems. Because it uses the social. I want anything that uses the Social Security number. I want to know about it because I'm going to assess taxes because you guys are admitting to holding onto my credit. And over here, here's a link to LexisNexis is a fourth mystery credit reporting agency. It's a fourth one, and here's the online request form for them to produce whatever LexisNexis holds on the back end as a credit reporting agency, on top of annual credit report. And annual credit report right now is you can get your credit reports every week. During the COVID pandemic, accessing your credit report is important. That's why Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion are continuing to offer free weekly online credit reports until April 2nd, 2021 or something like that. So so you go, and I want my credit reports because I want to see who is admitting to holding onto my credit. That's why I want it.
So what happens when, let's say, Dairy Queen has made the offer to enforce a policy on you, you've accepted it, but they refuse to give you a W-9. On the W-4, do you just write down their address, the location, and the name of the business if they will not give you the W-9? And what do you put in the spot where the EIN or TIN number should be?
Provide a W-9 affidavit. Somewhere in the regs, if they refuse to do it, I have to write up an affidavit somewhere in the Internal Revenue Manual. There's a $50 penalty. I make sure I notify them about the $50 penalty. I have a standard template I can hand out to Derek. But if they refuse to do it, it says in the regulations, I, the agent, write out an affidavit that they have refused. I know people just write refuse in there, but it actually talks about an affidavit. And I'll have to find that again. We're in the regulations. It says do an affidavit. But you can call them up. Some of these debt collectors, these fly-by-night North Carolina, like Assurant, or there's these dirtbag debt collector corporations out there, and they don't like handing it out. But so I'm not afraid of these debt collectors when they come, because I get to do my own assessment of the full value of the estate, because they're not going to give me the full 9-210 UCC Article 9-210 accounting. So I just come up with my Davila versus Shaleva. I come up with my alternate accounting, and I offer them to come back with their accounting, and I'll use theirs. But if they don't come back with anything, then my accounting stands the fact, and now they get slammed. That 13% coming out of $580,000 is huge. That's a huge hit for that corporation.
Absolutely brilliant. I don't think I've ever had anybody explain it to me quite as eloquently as you have explained it here. It's wonderful.
There's a guy in Appalachia, North Carolina, African American man, and when we started this in 2014, I had a meter reading, and he had his house out there. I just wrote down $260 on a $26 my electric bill is only $26 a month up in Chicago, and so I wrote down $260 for the withholding. I can handle that much. So I figured that I was timid about playing with it, and so I just put down 260. The Robert over in Appalachia, North Carolina, he wrote down $30,000 for Duke Energy, and on my instance, it was the middle of winter with snowdrifts 2 stories tall, and icicles, two-story tall icicles that would crush you if it fell on you. And all of a sudden, I get a letter 2 weeks later after turning in the W-4, taking the statement for the ComEd and write paid to United States Treasury, signed it, put it on a W-4, and then put the 1040V with the same amount. All of a sudden, I get a letter from ComEd saying, "Oh, we've made several attempts to read your meter, but it's behind a locked gate. And by law, we have to read the meter every 2 months. And could you please help us by either taking a picture or letting us in so that we can get the most accurate reading on your meter?" And I called her up and I said, "How'd you guys get in there before? I've been here 6 months. And how'd you get in there the last time?" "Oh, I don't have that information." I said, "Well, okay, here's the property manager. They can let you in. I don't have a key to the locked area, so contact the property manager." And the snowdrifts were 2 stories tall. I don't know how they got in there. And then I asked her, "Well, when was the last time the meter was read?" And she said, "Oh, it looks like 5 years ago." And I go, "Wait a minute. I've only been here 6 months. How do I know if I'm using the right amount of electricity? Maybe the people before me have been growing green leafy plants that people like to smoke and talk about." She laughed. She said, "Well, that's why we have to read the meter." And I said, "Well, that makes sense to me." I called Robert and told him what was going on. And he had, in the same 2 week period, he told me, "Well, I put $30,000 down on the W-4. And I said, "What happened?" He says, "Next thing I know, 2 white guys from Duke Energy are showing up at my house." And I went, "Oh no, what happened?" He goes, "No. They came in and they put insulation in my roof, insulation under the house, new seals around the doors and windows, wrapped the pipes, and gave me energy efficient light bulbs." And he said, I asked them, "How often do you guys do this sort of thing?" They said, "Well, not very often. We're just sitting around the most of the time, and we're happy we have something to do." And then Robert and I got talking, and I said, "Robert, now that the IRS knows that the electric company is using the name and social security number, they owe Subtitle C 13% taxes. And they want my meter, which hasn't been read in 5 years, as accurate as possible. And they want your house as efficient as possible. So these electric companies pay as little employment taxes as possible. So they have a vested interest in making sure your house is really efficient. And my meter is really, really accurate because they have to pay taxes and they want to pay as little as possible." So
That's absolutely brilliant. So the proof is in the concept. It's been proven multiple times. Are you willing to take questions or up for questions or?
Yeah, let me go. I can take questions. Let me go back up a little bit. Is there sound? Yes, 2603. Yes, it does, Malika. Malika makes sense. 10K. Form 10K will contain the EIN. I'll keep making notes in there. What's the effect of this process, Malika? Malika, by doing the W-4 and taking that withholding amount, when you send it in and sending it and putting it along with a Form 1040 and just putting the excise tax down there, just filling in the excise tax as a statement only, not signing it, just as a statement. You keep copies for yourself as well. Now that amount of withholding now becomes a withholding credit on your account. I'm changing over my accounting method from cash to accrual. Eon has a class about cash account versus accrual because the accrual amount rolls over where the tax credits keep rolling over. And that's the effect. The process is, it's also the process. My retirement was like $1,200 when I started this in 2014. And now it's like over 3,000. I haven't checked it in a year or two, but it's like $3,000, $4,000 as a Social Security benefit, because all these corporations are now paying 30% into my Social Security Medicare. And I haven't tried it, but I should actually get unemployment from all these W-4s, from all these corporations employing the electric company, internet banking. I should be able to get unemployment based on the W-4 withholding. Malika says this could be done with any type of bank account, quasi banks like PayPal. Yes, Yes, all these, anyone using Social Security linked accounts, they all have applications. They're all tied to the social. They all have a tax liability, and that's why they get so big. Because if I don't assess the tax, then I pay the taxes and they keep the credit. When I assess the tax, they pay the tax and I get my credit back. How many years can I go back? I'm never not the debtor. I can go all the way back to the beginning if I have my credit reports and evidence of the theft. I can recreate the record. And I can go all the way back. Only a debtor can only go back 3 years, but a creditor, I'm never not a creditor. It's always my credit. I can go get it anytime I want. Them ordering the goods and services and our acceptance by performance creates a contract. Yes, really good does. So does that mean religious immunity, religious exemption notice? No. I would do the religious exemption to have them violate your constitutional right, and that just adds more gravy to the gravy. Notice of liability against employers' mandatory vaccination offers that's really a SARS protein uptake. Okay, I don't know what that is. Could you send them an invoice first? No, my duty is to report to the IRS. I have no duty to report to Walmart or anybody else about anything. My duty is to report, because they don't want us to go to war with each other like we did in the Civil War. So they created this overarching agency, the Internal Revenue Service, or the IMF, and the Postal Service, so that we could actually take our controversies to the administrative level. At the administrative level, affidavits are facts. When you go in for a declaratory judgment, which is what the tax court is, if you go into an administrative hearing, affidavits are fact. And then once the declaratory judgment, once the hearing body, the Data Integrity Board hearing, it's under Title 552A, a Data Integrity Board hearing, a DIPHET, or the tax court, or even a private administrative where the facts are determined. And because a corporation cannot sign an affidavit, I can. So if I come after this corporation and I have my affidavit of statement of facts, who's going to come in and swear out the corporation's statement of facts? Well, they can't. There's no affidavit. Anything the corporation would bring in would be arguable, hearsay, because it's not sworn to. And so at the court is redeemed, would you send them an invoice? So I have no duty to report to an invoice to the corporation. My job is to send the invoice to the Internal Revenue Service, have the Internal Revenue Service take action on it. Oh, we have a statement right here that says you guys have been using the credit, and we even, when they send me a statement in the mail from these corporations are confessing to having my credit. Otherwise, they wouldn't be sending me a statement. So these statements every month, or the credit report, and these credit reports, all these trade lines are confessing to having my credit that was sourced from my Social Security number and account. They admit it. That's beautiful. Nothing like getting the other side to self-confess. Pursuant to the bailout, all those recipients, banks, and manufacturers are holding on. Well, they're holding on to the people's credits because I haven't assessed the credit to come back to me yet. I'm reading through the comments here. There's also a blurb somewhere in the code where if you don't get it in, you could be held liable for the tax. There's everything asked 3 times. Not 3 times, asked 3 times. I just fill out an affidavit saying they refuse. And they don't do it. But in there I said, there's a $50 fine on the face of the W-9. And the reason they put that chintzy little $50 fine, because it gives the IRS the ability to put a hook in the corporation. Now they can drag them in, because now they have a fine interest, financial interest, and they're not obeying. How would you handle a lock-in letter from the IRS? That lock-in letter. If you got a copy? Who is this? This is Caroline. Caroline, if you got a lock-in letter, if they gave you a copy of it, they probably have Title 26 6331 distraint and levy, and we're gonna change your W-4 to 0 and start withholding in 2 weeks unless you hear back from you. Blah blah blah. Well, if you look at that code 6331, they always start with number B. They never give you number A. Those yada yadas. And if you look at 26 6331, I got one of those from my last employer. I'm now suing them because I have a letter from the tax court that says I've never had a tax liability. So this is levy and distraint. Title 26. This is the lock-in letter. They quote this in the lock-in letter. Any person liable to pay the tax and neglects to do so, levy may be made right here. Levy may be paid upon the accrued salary or wages of any officer, employee, elected official of the United States, District of Columbia, or any agency or instrumentality of the United States, the District of Columbia, is serving a notice of levy on the employer of such officer, employee, elected official. Member of the Public Salary Tax Act. This is who the people that are liable, and it's not me. So they conveniently leave Part A out. And if we go further, put this down. If we go further and look at the parallel table of authorities, let's see what the levy restraint applies to. Right here, parallel table of authorities. Let's go to the U.S. Code statutes. Come down to Title 26, 6331. Control F, 6331. Look at that. 6331 is a Title 27 alcohol, tobacco, and firearms liability. I wrote a FOIA to the FBI, asking them if I've ever had a taxable event under the Attorney General's enforcement manual, and I can get that to the Derek, but I mentioned alcohol, tobacco, gambling, cotton. There's all these enforceable events, criminal events under Title 27. And none of them, Title 27 is alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Has nothing to do with wages or income, but it has wages or income derived from alcohol, tobacco, firearms, cotton growing, and those items. So they're trying to apply alcohol sales or gun sales or drug sales as if that's where you're getting your income from. And the IRS is so crafty about doing that because they use the transaction code TC150 in your electronic transcript. TC150 is a class 2 tax out of the Virgin Islands. So they take whatever income we make on that W-2. They say this is Virgin Islands income under class tax 2 under alcohol, tobacco, and firearms out of the Virgin Islands. They have a little code and they flip the codes around on the back end of the IRS. But as we saw, that lock-in letter, they're just playing a game. They're jerks. Where's my chat? There's a tax petition kit, Miss Lock-in letter. I don't remember your name, Caroline. I would look up Carrie Zollman. I will look up Carrie Zollman on YouTube and get a hold of them. And there's a tax petition kit that you'll send to the tax court denying you ever got a notice of deficiency and deny that there was never a determination for collection, and you'll get a no jurisdiction letter. And then at that point, your employer has now committed theft and conversion because that lock-in letter is not signed, and that's not statutorily sufficient because there's no signature by any responsible party with their, what type of badge do they have? Do they have an A badge, administrative? Do they have an E badge, enforcement badge? Who's ordering the unilateral change of your W-4, which is a violation of a federal court case? I went through that in 2019. And now I'm going to be suing that employer, suing Chase Bank, suing Bank of America Bank for the theft and conversion of property without a court order, without a writ, and without a warrant. Well, we got a letter that says we have to do this. I said, well, I'll give you a letter to go steal that car over there. Will you do that? No. Well, then why are you obeying that letter? It's not signed by anybody. It's not a court order. It's not a writ, and it's not a warrant. You're just going to take my shit because someone says so? Okay. That's theft and conversion, racketeering, extortion. So you go ahead and knock yourself out, but I don't consent to it. And I gave you notice. At the end, I'll give you the end. So that's how I'm still in the midst of doing that piece, going after them. How would I handle a lock-in letter? That's there. Can someone like this work if JAB is mandated by school? The schools, it's the same thing. They're employing your name and social security number, and now they want you a deckhand to get jabbed. You could do the same type conditional acceptance, and if they do terminate you, that's when you do out to 75 years. How much money would you have made until 75? And that becomes the alternate valuation of that charter of that name and social security number. I just assessed it. So there we go. Because if the employer would want to come back and say, no, we didn't front load the account, they said, well, fine, show me the MoneyNet daily transaction report log 120 from the Federal Reserve showing the source and destination of the funds and what funds were transferred. Pull that out, and we'll see whether or not they front-loaded the account. Money Net Daily Transaction Report Log 120 shows where the source of the funds and the destination of the funds and how much the funds are. Can I request a W-9 from my employer of 10 years, or do I need to hire? Do I need a new hire? No. I request W-9s from corporations all the time, just for shits and giggles. Because then when they don't cough it up, I just send it to the IRS with a suspicious activity report and a Form 211, so I can get paid because they're refusing to give me if they're not going to give me the tax ID number, they must be up to no good. And so I find corporations that piss me off, and I just go ahead and demand their W-9, then stick the IRS on them under Form 3949A, just to cause them misery when the IRS comes knocking. I love the IRS. They're terrified of the IRS, and that makes me love them because I'm their agent. But someone can do. So what can someone do if they got let go because they didn't take the jab? That was at 124. Okay, if they terminated your job, that job had value, because when you turned in the credit application to begin work, the value of your salary is what they projected out to 75 years. So if I'm 55 at $100,000 a year job, they actually took $100,000 for the next 20 years and scooped it all up at the very beginning to fund the charter. So that's $2 million that my last employer is sitting on. And when they threw me off the boat, I couldn't do my time cards anymore. So they withheld that credit line. So I assessed the value of that credit line on a W-4, take my termination documents. When they give me the termination documents, tax for termination, taxable per 2603 of Title 26. And then I do an assessed value to it, and I send it off to the IRS with a W-4 1040V, because that tax for termination, that's why they give you a termination document. Okay, if that makes sense, Eric. They didn't let go. They threw you off the boat and they terminated you. They terminated your interest in the contract. Now they got to pay for the full value of the contract they terminated. I did a 1099A, 1099C on court cases for $2 million and 29 cases. On 29 cases, Martha, you are a busy girl. 29 cases, you're up to something. You're having a good time. And the IRS approved them. Can I do the W-4 on each of them? Yeah, I would, for the court. So whatever court was holding on to those cases, and that case number is the account number. And yes, I would do the W-4, so they have to pay into Social Security, Medicare. And I'm really happy these people want to employ my person and pay all these taxes, because I want a fat retirement account, even though it's supposed to go bankrupt in 2028. What is the list of form statement list to file for each corporate debtor business? How often would these files these per debtor? How often would you file them? You could do it quarterly. I mean, it might be easier to do it quarterly because the paperwork that piles up is just shoe boxes full of fucking receipts. You can do it quarterly. You can do it yearly with the all the little statements plus the mask and everything. I'm not sure which recounting you're talking about, Malika, for that 1:25 p.m. I recently got a property tax bill on my mother's home. She passed last year, and I'm trying to sell it. I've tried to pay the property taxes before with a 1099A. They wouldn't accept it. How would I handle that? Well, Duco, I would do the tax petition kit that Carrie Zolman talks about, because the last call, in fact, Carrie goes over this property tax issue, because the property tax is the same tax. It's an excise tax like every other tax out there. And if the tax court rules, I would even do a tax petition kit for your dead mother. And when, for the entire time she worked, for her entire life, as if your mother never had a tax liability, you as the executor can go back in your mother's past and scoop up all the taxes she's ever paid, now comes to the estate. And then you would do the same thing for yourself. But if you don't have if the person does not have a tax liability, then the question is, okay, Mr. County Assessor, who are you collecting taxes for? The cartels, the Russians, because the tax court says there is no tax liability. Who are you collected for? What taxing authority are you taking money for? Because the tax court says no, there's no liability. And that becomes a conundrum. And you would also go back and get all your property taxes back too. Property tax bill. What if your company fires you on some technicality after you start the ball rolling with a what they got the ball rolling on 50 million? I'm not sure what that means. 50 million what? I know dollars of some kind. Ball rolling with a 50 million offer. Who offered him 50 million? That was a helpful answer. You're welcome, Caroline. Notice of deficiency and what else? It's a notice of determination and a notice of deficiency. And Carrie Zolman goes over that. Derek probably, I'll make sure Derek gets the most recent email from Ed Bauman and Carrie, and they have 33 attachments, and there's a template for a tax petition kit for that we send to the tax court, and you just fill it out. And Carrie has calls on every other Tuesday and every Thursday. There's a call with Carrie Zolman, and we talk about this stuff. And I'm smoking baby on these calls as well. Carrie, no, CaryZolman. Carrie Zolman. Type it in there. CaryZolman. You see, would you do a 1041 since I'm a secure? No, the Social Security number is tied to the Social Security number is tied to the W-4, tied to the 1040. And if you wanted to take some, if you had, you realize you don't have any tax liability, and 100% of what is earned at this employment stuff is all in excise tax. So there is no income at the top. There's only excise tax on the bottom. And there's even a regulation 261341 where there's a claim of right because my labor is a deductible issue. So there's no reason unless I'm going to earn money under my estate or trust EIN number, would I ever need to do the 1041? Because if I get 100% back using the 1040, I'm happy using the 1040. And it's interesting because the 1040, amazing. There's a tax estimate charter. There's that one. Where is my? Oh, here it is. 26. I really can't see. There's a. When we get a job, we fill out a W-4 and an I-9 form, right? That's what we do. We fill out a W-4 and an I-9 form. The tricky part is then we do this 1040 tax thing. Fill out a form 1040, and the I-9 form 26 1040. I-9 is an agricultural form. It's the Department of Agriculture. That's what the I-9 is. We're a farmhand because the 1040 tax and the form 1040 is a transfer of certain farm, etc. real property, transferring farm property. My labor, my body is a landed estate that produces agricultural products. My signature, my time, my EKG, my blood, my breath, all this is an agricultural product, including my time commodity. If you rent a cow or a horse to plow the field, that's a time commodity. So the 1040 tax is a farm tax, and the I-9 is a farm form. So that's what the 1040 is. So ridiculous. So that's how that 1040 works. We are just getting started, and I will show you all the other side of the coin view. Oh, that's Derek. Okay. I guess someone's talking to Derek. Title 26 1040. There's another interesting publication. I contacted because I have a lien out there, $74,000 lien at Cook County. And it was shenanigans. Anyway, so there's a lien out there. And when I go look up the lien by going in there and finding the recording, it says it's $74,423. And it's the type of tax on that lien on the 688Y notice of federal tax lien says type of tax 1040, a 1040 tax. Well, the 1040 tax is the farm tax. So when I fill out those, remember the forms I showed you, the 2373, the 10492, and the 4490? mandate, and yes, down here. When I fill out the forms, the 2373 and 10492, it says type of tax, right? This kind of tax, I would put in that first column 2603 tax. That's the type of tax, 2603, just like they put 1040 on the federal tax, on that notice of federal tax lien. But it's interesting, on that 688Y notice of federal tax lien, everyone says, oh, that's fraudulent, you can't do it, blah, blah, blah. Well, there was $74,000 of unbalanced tax credits, because I quit doing the whole filing thing back when I got in trouble with the IRS back in 2002 or 3 or something like that, and I went to tax court, and I did a tax petition kit, and you have 90 days to file a tax petition kit when the IRS starts barking at you. And so on the 82nd day, I did an awesome petition, which is great, to the tax court, and I sent it in, and the IRS wrote back a week later saying, motion to dismiss on the grounds that petitioner failed to respond in a timely manner. I go, wait a minute, I had 90 days. I sent it on the 82nd day. It got there before the 90th day. And in the IRS's petition, they wrote that petitioner didn't file in a timely manner because 82 days is just as good as 90. And they showed a court case where 82 days is just as good as 90. And so I was thinking about it. I said, so the IRS sent me a demand to give them $12,000 back, and I didn't respond within 4 days. So on the 4th day, I became the debtor. I don't care if it's 100 days, 2 years, it doesn't matter. On the 4th day, when they wrote a notice and I had 3 days to rebut, I didn't rebut within the 4-day period, within 3 days. On the 4th day, I became the debtor. So I wrote back to the tax court, and I told the tax court that petitioner agrees with respondent that 82 days is just as good as 90, just as 3 days, just like 4 days is just as good as 90. And however, it's more than apparent that I am not well schooled and untrained in regards to the public policy and the Internal Revenue Code and tax matters. And until I get caught up and educated and ensure that I understand how it works, I will not be filing any more returns, because I must file under penalty of perjury. And it's more than apparent I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not going to perjure myself. And he sent it back to the tax court. And the tax court wrote back. He said, petitioner, and he put it in quotes, petitioner agrees with respondent, and that petitioner will endeavor to better understand the tax code, blah, 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 blah. And then I haven't filed since then. I just haven't done anything since then, because they never trained me how to use this tax code or do anything like that. They haven't trained me. So and so in the meantime, there's all this excise tax, all this unbalance of accounts setting up to 74,000 in 2014, and all of a sudden I get this notice of federal tax lien. They had the hearing without me and everything else, blah blah blah. And so that $74,000 is an excise tax that's unbalanced. And people say that's fraudulent. I go, until I looked into the Cook County records where it said that the IRS is the grantor and Smoking Baby is the grantee. It's not a creditor-debtor relationship. It's a grantor-grantee relationship. So what happens is this guy's a private investigator and some kind of the dude that the guy's name, Mr. Fisher, his name, and he has his IRS number in there. Mr. Fisher came and scooped up that $74,000 of unbalanced excise tax. He put it in his pocket, named himself the grantee, and named himself the grantor, and named me the grantee, and thereby locking up in a perpetuity. It's a tax credit for him. He's probably investing the shit out of it. So it's not fraudulent, because Mr. Fisher filed a lien against himself. He didn't file a lien against me. He filed a lien against Mr. Fisher because he's the grantee, and he never paid me the grant. He withheld the grant. So my recouping of that $74,000 is going to be via W-4, where I assess the taxes. And now the excise taxes that are unbalanced are no longer unbalanced. And now Mr. Fisher, as the grantee, has to turn over that grant. And the fun thing about grants is If I get a grant, $10,000 grant to go to school, I don't pay back the grant. It's not a loan. So that's the fun part about that. Does this apply to mortgages? Yes. The mortgages is more involved. We can have a longer class on that because of the complexity of all the scuttlebutt. There are at least 7 different defects in what they call a mortgage. There's 7 different defects, and it's much longer than this class. Just talking about people who are facing losing their job, they still have a credit line out to 75 years, and I get to assess the tax. I get to assess the value. That's how much are my shoes worth in the desert? Well, I'm going to assess the value. I'm going to do a good faith value. I'm not going to be Mr. Elo getting a gagillion, babillion, zillion dollars, like he did civilly on the Austin Powers show. But I'll make it a good faith based on the value of the contract at the time of termination. If I was making 150,000 at the time of termination, I would do the assessment of 150 out until 20 years, and do that withholding, because so that's different than a mortgage. The mortgage is completely different. There's multiple W-4s, multiple 1040s, there's multiple parties, there's multiple defects, and not to mention a mechanics lien and an agricultural lien that goes into the mortgage thing, and the mortgage and in the foreclosure processes, they do not blink at having a mechanics liens 4 times the value of the house. They don't blink. They don't blink at all. This is a lot of words, but probably a lot of words that maybe float over people. I hope I didn't boggle the brain instead of refresh the brain. But basically, I have to determine the value of the estate, add up all the deposits and all the withdrawals, or how much the value I'm earning now out to 75 years, because the vessel has to retire at 75 years, and that's the amount of value that they took and withheld from. And that's why I use a withholding certificate. I just have to produce the evidence of it, either put them in default or use their own statements, and that goes with the W-4 along with the 1040-V, and I fill out whatever's on the W-4, I put it on the withholding section of the 1040, and send it all in to room 3413, 1500 Pennsylvania Avenue, with a cover letter saying this is my good faith estimate, because as it is my intent to be in voluntary compliance with the Internal Revenue Code. And in furtherance of my intending to be in voluntary compliance with the Internal Revenue Code, I present this good faith estimate and statement of withheld credit transferred to transferee, or terminated by trustee of taxable termination, job number, or skip person who's transferring credits to a skip person to transfer who's liable under 2603. This is my good faith effort. If there's a better way you want me to do it, please let me know. If you have any suggestions how to make it better, or if there's any mistakes, please let me know. I am here to assist the Internal Revenue Service, for it is my intent to be in voluntary compliance with the Internal Revenue Code. Kindly yours, Agent Smoking Baby. And so now I can't be a tax protester. I can't be a tax protester. And I've stated multiple times it's my intent to be in voluntary compliance, and I need your help, IRS. So the IRS can't bitch about me. If they don't give me help, they can't come back, right? But I gave them, told them I needed the help. They can't come back and do anything other than help me. They certainly can't charge me with any type of evasion. Use the IRS on their. I love the IRS though. And if the enemies knew anything about the IRS, they could turn around and hit the Clintons for the liability. They just knew how to. Maybe the group here, I've been trying to put together false statements by Fucci and by that Wizolinsky, that nasty beast, and by the NIH and the NAID. I'm trying to find false statements where they made factually false statements, because under Title 15, 78FF, false statements have a $25 million liability. And realize any representative of value is an obligation of the United States. And that statutory penalty of 25 million, once assessed based on a false statement, because I'm going to send Fucci a little letter saying, here's all your statements. I've seen no facts or evidence that these statements are not false. Please respond with proof that these statements are indeed not false. And when he doesn't do it, it's an automatic default, and it's a $25 million, because he admits to making false statements by not rebutting my negative averment affidavit. And then I'll just send it all to the IRS. Here you go, Mr. Fucci has a $25 million false statement penalty. And now Fucci has to go play with the IRS and convince the IRS that his statements aren't false. Imagine him doing that. At Fucci making the statements not false. Same thing that with Zelensky, all these other dirtbags out there making false statements, even the newscasters and everybody else, because you can't sue them because the jab murders people, but you can sue them for making false statements under consumer protection. They're not
And that
immune.
falls under Title 15, 1692E and Title 15, 1692, 78FF. Is that correct?
It's Title 1692E and 78FF. So consumer protection says they can't make false statements. Of course, you can't sue them for the jab. That's going to murder everybody. But you can hit them for the false statements. Consumer protection.
Can you pull that up on the screen so people can see what you're speaking of, if that's not too much?
Sorry about that. I'm just having fun seeing it in my brain.
Sure appreciate all the guidance that you're providing today.
Oh, dude, I love hitting people with taxes. It's so much fun. People, by people, I mean dead corporations. A debt collector may not use false or misleading deceptive tax in the connection with a debt without limiting the general application of the foregoing. The following conduct is violated: false representation or implication of a debt collector. Because you realize they're getting all kinds of money for this jab stuff, right? So since they're getting all kinds of money for this jab stuff, okay, you're collecting debts for the American taxpayers for your poison, and you're making false statements to collect it. So this is I realize I'm construing this. Let them go argue it's not true. Imagine them going to argue this stuff. That'd be hilarious. Now they have to prove it wrong. Let me go back. I can't see the line. I have to shrink it again. It's where the banner's not shrinking away, Derek. I don't know what's going on. 15, 78 FF.
What banner are you speaking of?
You know, the stop sharing and all the controls at the top of the screen.
Oh yeah, I can't see it on my end, but that is.
I know, but
you can see on yours, yeah.
Here you go. Willful violations, false and misleading statements. 5 million and 25 million. And prison, 20 years. I just assess it and let them go. I'm just doing a good faith assessment based on what I hear. I don't have to have any first-hand knowledge. Neither does the IRS have to have first-hand knowledge. Nothing the IRS says, prints, or mails out is factual. The Supreme Court says you can't rely on anything the IRS says because it's the taxpayer's job to know the law, not the IRS. Well, since I'm acting as a tax assessor, I can allege and assess all these things in good faith based on these statutes. And now Mr. Fucci and Mr. Wazalewski and the NIH and NAID and Brian Seltzer and all these other douchebags out there lying on the news. Oh, now they can go argue with the IRS and prove that they are indeed not making false statements, or prove that it doesn't apply to them. You call them up in court and everything like that. But the IRS is going to be collecting 13% up front, and they can fight to get the 13% back if it's wrong. I love the IRS. And I've registered as a foreign agent on behalf of the IMF with the Department of Justice as well. And that's still in the works. I'm waiting to hear back. I want to be a foreign agent. Show them my badge. I'm an IMF agent. I need to see all your books. I need to see all your accounting related to this account number, social security number. I'm an IMF agent. So yes, there's some more questions about who can hit, I guess. I don't mean to pull up all the time. Yes, I was wrong. Who was wrong? What were you wrong about? How could you be wrong? Great stuff. Thank you. What were you wrong about, Focus? I'm curious. I don't know what you were wrong about. The code about, okay. Oh, you're having a chat with somebody else, okay. Yeah, so consumer protection is where I'm hitting them with lying to the public. So anyone lying to the public, you just assess a tax for it and let them go argue themselves out of a bag.
Because all crimes are commercial under CFR, what is it, 27? Oh, I can't remember now. 72. All crimes are commercial under CFR 277211. All crimes are commercial.
So Pauline asked this question. Even when faced with a non-judicial foreclosure, where the home is sold to an enterprise, the tax credits, and perhaps keep the home as well. You're the creditor. You don't have a debt. You can't have a debt. You engage in a third-party retail installment agreement as an undisclosed third-party investor and an undisclosed third-party beneficiary to an irrevocable trust. There's so many defects, and yeah, you're the source of everything. Even if the house is gone, you can still go back and hit them with the taxes. Can you show all the docs needed to stop the backs, for examples? I only heard about this last night. I'll be working up with Derek to make a template as far as the assessment. And there's a couple other really good websites out there about the religious exemptions. But there's also there's a tax form, 10 NEC, 1099 NEC. Show credit. Non-employee compensation. Let's look at the instructions. Control F. Emotional. Look at this. United States damages received on account of emotional distress, including physical symptoms such as insomnia, headaches, stomach disorders. You can hit the 1099 NEC. You can assess a tax for these things on the 1099 NEC. Emotional distress. This is a new form, by the way. Also, report liquidated damages received under age discrimination, foreign agricultural workers, FATCA. There's all kinds of really good stuff in this NEC. It used to be part of the miscellaneous, but they've really broken this stuff out really nicely here for the NEC. See the MISC and NEC, they split them up recently. And you still have the 1098F, 1099, 1099, 1098F. I thought Malika came up with that. I'm not sure. 1098F for fees and fines. 1098F. Yeah, fines, penalties, and other amounts. This is another fun one. So if they cause you distress, you can hit them with that. How much is your distress worth? You can put a value to it, and I can sign an affidavit. I've seen no facts or evidence. The value of my distress is not $50,000 or $100,000. You don't want to do a gagillion, babillion, zillion like Dr. Evil. But there might even be some court cases for the intentional affliction of emotional distress. Might be some awards out there which are reasonable awards given the circumstances. So you can use the 1099 NEC. This is my jam right here to show you. The use of credit. How would you assess a new? That's all financing with the houses that are outside the idea of employment. I have a transcription of the CEO of my employer making false statements. Can I build a case for him? Well, if he made false statements, you could hit him with a false statement then. Let's see what he does. Fun to do. Because you're just doing this in good faith. I always write done in good faith. So we go jam. So I can go back to 2008 when I lost 5 homes to foreclosure and use this process to assess the taxes. Yes, you can do that. But right now we're dealing with employers. So there's multiple defects in the real estate part. Look into it, run with it. But if you just get 1% back, you're going to Vegas for a long time. Is there a false claim form for the IRS? Should we use as a statement? No. The false claims under Consumer Protection in Title 15 just establishes a value for being a douchebag at $25 million. So once we establish the representative of value, which is Title 18, Section 8, which is an obligation in the United States, well, then we just take that false claim, send it to the United States for that $25 million. Now, whoever made the false statements owes the United States $25 million, and they'll get hit by the IRS.
This is where you're doing your civic duty to make sure the United States Treasury isn't being robbed because you're an investor in the United States Treasury. You have an interest in bringing down the national debt.
So these corporations, they scoop out a chunk out of these corporations and put it back in the Treasury, and it comes back to us as credit. So these corporations will now have to behave because they can't just run amok. as long as I let the corporations, if I don't assess the amount of transfer, taxable terminations, and skip person transfer or value, if I let these corporations run away with all that credit, I'll be impoverished, slaving away while these corporations build bigger, bigger, and bigger buildings and buy bigger and bigger yachts, going to bigger, bigger private islands, Mr. Amazon and all you other assholes out there, because they're running away with the credit. Why? Because I'm not assessing the transfer taxes that are liable to whoever the transferee is or trustee is. We start assessing all these taxes. Imagine if we had just 100,000 Americans hit Pfizer with 25 million in false claims and false statements act, Pfizer would be destroyed. Same thing with all these other assholes, they'd be destroyed. So the false, well, it's not a false statement report. We send taxes. We do an assessment. We establish the value of the false statement at 25 million. Now that we've established the value of 25 million, anything that represents value is a Title 18, Section 8 obligation of the United States. And so since it's an obligation in the United States, I take the value of that 25 million in whatever evidence I have shows that they defaulted and made false statements. I write paid to United States Treasury, done in good faith by the name, and then I attach it to a W-4 with 25 million with the evidence of the representative of value with the 1040V and the 1040, the 25 million sent down there, and I sent it off to 3413 1500 Pennsylvania Avenue with a letter saying this is my good faith assessment of the value of this false statement. And I'm here to help you. It's my intent to be in voluntary compliance. If you can any way to make it better, please let me know. If there's training, I would love to get training. And if there's anything you need, please let me know. And I'm coming in because I'm their agent now. I'm working with the IRS. I am the assessor. I do the tax assessment. They're not my enemy. So it's not a false statement report. It's a report of 25 million liability from the false statements. And that's the representative of value. And let the IRS go do that collection.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe it's 25 million if it's an individual making it the false statement. It's 100 million if it was based upon the corporation making the false statement.
Is that what it says? I don't remember.
I believe so. I believe that was 78 FF.
Yeah, 78 FF. I see 5 million, 25 million. What's in there? 2 million issuer.
Might have been Title 15, 1692E was 100 million.
No, 1692E is the circumstance, and 78 FF is another. I see 5 and 25. I see 5 and 25.
There you go.
And 20 years. And 20 years. Let's see. Rushmore loan is the response to my remittance. In response to my remittance, stated to me in a letter, they don't deal in UCCs or 1099s. Well, that's fine. I'll assess a tax, and you can talk to the IRS about it. And I would send that letter with them too. Oh, here's what these people. I'm not sure what to do with this, but here's my assessment of the amount of transferred credit to the transferee on line 8, and the amount transferred on line 6. So here you go. Got it. I use with the W-4 price. It's used with the W-4 price. Yes, the W-4 is the assessment. The W-4 form is the basis of the amount of credit transferred to the the line 8 person or the employer. So the W-4 is the assessment tool, because the W-4 is not a claim. It's an anti-claim. Don't pay me $30,000, which means they have $30,000 in credit. So it goes with the W-4, the 1040V to the 1040. Just like the 2373, the 10492, and the 4490. And the prompt assessment 4810 is a 3949A. I mean, they're parallels. It's always in threes. What would be a guideline for assessing the tax against a utility company since we use that service for life? Well, actually, you're interested in that service of life, and that's why you loan them credit. And since you loan them a principal amount of credit, you get paid your interest payment up front. And there's principal and interest. Usually the interest is paid first, then the principal last. Well, when I turned on my electric, I got electric because I was interested in electricity. So I issued an Article 5 letter of credit, which became the credit that funded my account. And the principal amount that was funded is all the statements plus all the payments and the interest payment. I get the interest payment up front. I get electricity right now up front. So I'm getting my interest up front because I was interested in electricity. But the principal amount of the credit, the $10,000, 5,000 in statements, 5,000 in payments, that principal amount of loaned credit at the end of the year, W4, 1040V statements on a 1040, I get my 10 grand back, but I get my interest payment up front, electricity or water or internet or banking. There's interest doesn't have to be in chicken. It doesn't have to be in dollar bills. It's going to be in chickens and, you know, light bulbs and stuff like that. This is better than Mary Croft and Dean. Oh, thank you. This is really fun because I don't have to argue anything. I just come in as the agent and do a good faith assessment based on the evidence I've acquired, and let the IRS go run with them. So much fun. I really do like doing this. There was a case where this guy got a judgment against this people he did sprinkler service for in northern Utah, and it was a $3,000 judgment. And he was moaning and groaning about, oh, I don't know how to collect it. I don't know how to collect it. They won't pay me. So my paralegal background, I went over to the court and said, yeah, I'm here for a judgment debtor, and we need to come in and begin the collection action. And the clerk at the window, very nice, she says, oh, you want a motion and supplemental hearing? Okay, here's a packet. They gave me this motion and supplemental hearing where we moved the court for a supplemental hearing for writs of garnishment, seizure, attachment, and whatever the other one is. We're talking a while. And so we brought up the motion in supplemental hearing, and I included with that motion in supplemental hearing the form 433A, which is an individual, and a 433B, that's for a business. Where when the IRS comes to seize your stuff, they send you out a 433A and 433B so you can write down all your assets so the IRS knows where to go scoop them. So in this motion and supplemental hearing, I moved the judge to order the debtor, the judgment debtor, to fill out these 433A and 433Bs, showing all their assets, because if they're cheating the judgment creditor, they're probably also cheating the Internal Revenue Service and the United States as well. They got hit with that, and they come running into court. No, we'll come in, we'll make a payment plan. We don't want to fill out these forms. We'll just make a payment plan. They're terrified of the IRS, so it's a motion and supplemental hearing. Why not use them to our advantage? What's them? So the taxes, utility policies. Why not us them to our advantage? I don't know what that means, or I'm hogging up a lot of time with that. Use them. What is it? What is them? What is it, that, them, thee, though, they, he, she, it, we? What is them? Pronouns kill me. Pronoun trouble. Go type in pronoun trouble in Google and you'll see Bugs Bunny go run it. Sorry, where are those forms again? Oh, 433 Alpha and 433 Bravo. 433A and 433B. Because if they're cheating me, they're probably cheating the IRS too. The judge looked at it, he says, oh, that's reasonable. He went ahead and wrote the order. They treat you completely different as a judgment creditor. You don't have to pay anything. You just come in there, file whatever you want. It's your judgment creditor. Yep, that's it. But Zerf, we are using the IRS to, I'm not using it to my advantage. I'm actually an IRS agent because I have to do place orders, keep records, and report to the IRS. I'm an agent for the IRS in the first place. And if I want to go to war with my principal, I don't know why I want to do that. I just call and ask them for help. Hey, I need your help. How do I do this? Hey, I need help trying to do that. Most people go half-cocked and just do whatever they want and don't sign in good faith. I like getting instruction ahead of time because once I put them on notice, this is what I intend to do. This is how I'm going to do it. Here's an example of what I'm going to do. If you see anything inappropriate or any way to improve it, please let me know. Otherwise, if I don't hear back from you, I'll go ahead and proceed. I sent out IRS has something called enrolled agents. They're like, you know, in the Catholic Church, you have cardinals with those, you know, red robes and everything. Well, enrolled agents are like cardinals in the Catholic Church, and they can go anywhere and represent anybody anywhere across state lines, whereas CPA is stuck within their boundaries. So this enrolled agent, where was I going with that? Agents. Oh, so I found an enrolled agent. And I tried to call him up, and he never answered the phone, never returned my phone call. So in October of 2016, it was October 8th, 2016, I wrote an email to the IRS asking them about this enrolled agent. I said, do you have any information about this enrolled agent? I've contacted him several times, but he's not actually responding. And I need his assistance so that I can be in voluntary compliance. 2 years later, to the day, plus 10, 2 years later, on October 18th, 2018, the IRS wrote me back saying, do you still need help with this enrolled agent? If you do, please submit another request. It took them 2 years to respond to an email. So when I give them a notice ahead of time, this is what I intend to do. Here's my example. If I need some help, please let me know if I can do it better. I give them notice and fair hearing to show that I'm on their side. I'm not going off hack cop, just doing whatever I want to, like a doofus. Because I'm the agent. As the agent, I have a duty to check in with my principal and get direction from my principal under the law of agency. There's a book out there, The Law of Agency. It goes back, it's old. So I give them notice. And now they can't come back and say I did it willfully or anything like that. And no, see right here, this email I sent you? Yeah, here we go. I asked you for help. You didn't provide it. And now you're gonna bitch about it? I shifted liability as soon as I gave you notice and you didn't do anything. Now the liability rests on you. You have a primary active degree of fault. Don't bitch at me. How would you work this process from an estate perspective? An estate EIN. What's the source of the credit for the estate? Reginald L. I mean, estate trusts and estates are for three things: managing corporations, controlling governments, controlling corporations, and for asset flow. That's what these trusts and estates are for: controlling governments, controlling corporations, and for asset flow. That's the purpose of a trust and a trust and estate. It's limiting liability. Otherwise, I just use the social. Yeah, I like the social. Well, yeah, it's a decedent estate, but again, estates are for asset flow. And an estate by itself is not a business entity. If you start using an estate EIN out there, now it becomes a trust and estate, and it's taxed like a trust and estate. And if it's a grantor trust or estate, then it's taxed at the same rate as the grantor is, unless you have an exchanger instead of a grantor. I mean, so I just like using the social because the social is a direct hit to the IMF, which is the source of the value behind the money, because my birth certificate funded it all when they got the Social Security number. So that's my IMF account. The Social Security number is my IMF account. I'm perfectly happy with it. People want to get rid of it and everything. And why? I don't have a tax liability. Has no jurisdiction over the estate of a person who is affected. Yeah, you have to come back and prove you're alive. I agree with all that. But we're talking about taxes right now. There's still tax liability unless you take a fiduciary fee of 100% everything the trust makes. But I want to get all that credit back. I don't want to have a zero tax liability. I want to have a net positive to get all the excise tax credit back. I want the tax credits back. I just don't want it to go to zero. If you sent for your the master file, I'm gonna subpoena my master file to the tax court. IRS won't copy. Yeah, I guess they do for some people, but they gave me a runaround for like 3 years trying to get my BMF and IMF. There's also an NMIF. There's a couple different ones. So I'm going to subpoena through the tax court so I can change that domicile from Virgin Islands back to Alabama. TC 150 is a Virgin Island code, and that's how they get everybody into Title 27, because they falsified their records because no one corrected the record or knew it existed to state where our domicile is. So that domicile is presumed to be in the District of Columbia or one of its possessions, and that's how the IRS gets away with it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you could do all that, but again, I just play with the social. I don't. The W-4 only takes a social. The W-4 doesn't take anything else. So So if I want to assess taxes, I hit them with the W-4. That takes the social. Everything else is, anyway, all social. I'm not afraid of the social. I don't have a tax liability. The tax court already ruled I don't have a tax liability, which makes me a tax predator. I'm not terrified. Everyone's using these LLCs and they're trying to minimize. I was going to say evade, but that's too harsh. Minimize their taxes. I don't have a tax liability. Yes, that's all true, but it has nothing to do with the W-4 process and how these people who are going to get fired from their job when they're terminated from their job go back and assess all that credit that was front loaded when they started the job at the very beginning. Because if they get terminated, now they get to go assess the remaining value of that bareboat charter of 100,000 a year out to your 75 and assess that tax determination of that account because you were interested in that account and they threw you off the boat and you're the one that funded the operation. Fine, give me all my credit back. You don't get to throw me off the boat that I funded the operation for and then say I can't come eat there anymore. Screw you. I'm gonna assess the tax. I'm gonna assess the remaining value of the estate as a withholding tax. And then watch them weep.
Yeah, there's that Dr. Evil laugh I was waiting for.
Their weeping be a praise to God of his righteousness in heaven. Their weeping will prove how righteous God is.
Right. Amen to that. Any other questions for Smoking Baby before we shift gears? We're getting ready to go into the private side of it, not saying that what Smoking Baby has shared with you is not on the private side, just another aspect of the private side. This is an excellent seminar on tax assessment using the W-4 for getting your credits. All other ideas are for other purposes.
So Derek, I suspect that the process you're doing would be the offensive process when you're going to contact them to get them to admit something.
That's correct. We're going to come in a position of being a man or a woman. We're going to stray away from using things like defendant, interloper, interpleader, witness, plaintiff, and we are going to attack the subject matter mano y mano, man versus man, woman versus woman, or woman versus man. And we leave the fictional realm and we come into reality where we hold our own court. And what ends up happening, and we're in the middle of this process now, it's already been proven to work many of times before. It was presented to me a few years back, and I kind of pushed it off to the back burner for a while. And I got tired of grinding statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations, and I saw a much simpler path to bringing forward a claim, not a complaint. The important thing about it was to identify the difference in the jury.
What? Now you're blinking. You just blinked a little bit.
You can't touch it. It's intangible. You can't smell it. You can't taste it. You can't feel it. All right. It's something that you either know that exists or you don't have any knowledge of it. And when you don't have any knowledge by default, you fall subject to be prey. And look, I start talking and now it says I have unstable internet connection.
I know, yeah. As soon as you start talking.
Yeah. And this is what happens during every one of my classes. But anyway, we will do our best to get through it. So what I'm going to be, and first of all, let me start off by saying thank you, Smoking Baby. What a brilliant presentation. And for those of you that it went over your head, don't worry. If you're a participating member, you will get an audio video copy of this in an MP4 form. So don't fret if it went over your head. You'll be able to go back and recap over and over and over again until those seeds mature and manifest into your mind and give you a adequate knowledge base for standing your square and executing that process. It's very simplistic. Although he went into great detail about it, it is actually very, very simple. Okay. And his process avoids all the semantics of going into court and trying to put forth any argument or anything like that. Okay. It's just the same process I execute is similar in the fact that one, there is no argument. At the end of the day, it's just here, sign this writ of execution, because we effectively have given notice to them about a future trespass that will cause us harm. And we are going to ask them if it is their intent. Now, failure to respond to this notice is acquiescence by tacit agreement. And at that point, if they move against you, you have your first notice, your first correspondence in place that actually proves that their intent was, in fact, they were noticed about the fact that if they moved against you, it would, in fact, cause you harm and be perceived to be a trespass against your unalienable rights, for which you are rightfully due and owing just compensation, not an income, not a reward, just compensation. So we'll get started off on that here in just a moment. First off, before we get going any further, we've been here for a couple hours. Anybody need like a 10 or 15 minute break, use the restroom, get all that stuff out of your system?